Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tamina Kaustri. Niaga Spotlight takes us through the week in economic analysis and future affairs. Now this week on Future Affairs, to kickstart Merdeka Month, our spotlight is Sabah's Youth Vote Catalyst for Economic and Political Transformation. Now, Sabah is young and Sabah is watching, with over 53% of Sabah's voters aged between 18 and 39 as of 2024, which amounts to more than 910,000 youth. We are looking at the largest generational voting bloc in the state's history. But this isn't just a demographic shift, it's a political and economic reckoning. Now, from the implementation of MA 63 to the underfunding of rural districts to mass outmigration of educated Sabahan youth, the next state government will answer not just to political parties, but to a generation fed up with empty manifestos. And while the Sabah State Assembly dissolves by November 11th latest, the question is no longer if youth will matter, it is how they will use their vote to demand jobs, land rights, digital equity, and women's representation in real terms. Joining me today are two voices from organizations driving that grassroots change. Melvin, Vice President of Sabah Entitlement and Equity Now, and Priska Magdalena, team from Sabahan Young Women's Movement, Hi MANDAK. We're asking, can youth not only swing this election, but rebuild the system after it? Let's dive in. A very good morning to the both of you. How are we doing? Fantastic. So let me get started off with the conversation. Priska as well as Melvin, Sabah's youth make up over 53% of the voter base for this upcoming state election cycle. But at the same time, policy visibility on youth demand actually remains minimal. In your opinion, perhaps I could start with Priska. What factors are blocking this demographic, your demographic majority, from becoming a political priority? Priska, can you hear me? Yes, please proceed.
Sorry.
Melvin?
Melvin.
So I'm going to start first, yeah. So currently, based on my perspective, right? So basically, Sabah youth, it made up over 53% of the electorate.
Yeah.
Yet their priority often seem invisible to those in power, which I'm referring to the politician now. So basically, this mismatch exists because political decisions still flow from centralized structures that often overlook Sabah local context. So at SIM, we believe youth need to move beyond just voting. They must stay organized and vocal even between election. So that means demanding better policy engagement, asking thoughtful questions, and understanding how local governance work, like the PBT, like the local governance are. If in Sabah, we refer it as DBKK and so on. So when youth organize and act consistently, they stop being treated as a demographic to win over. Like the politician treat us as a fixed deposit. Why? Because it's easier for them to manipulate us. But when we start to ask questions, then they will realize that we actually is a threat to their political survival. Yeah, that's from my side. Thank you.
The conversation with that. We are experiencing a couple of technical difficulties on Priska's line side while we do look at amending that. Let's continue on with the conversation. So Melvin, what you highlighted is actually absolutely accurate. Now, research from Indonesia, for example, their 2024 elections is showing that sustained youth organization actually leads to manifestos which are in favor of the youth majority, but it has to continue and start off way before the actual election campaigning even begins. Now, well said also. Let's move on into looking at the fact that Sabah also has the youngest median age in Malaysia, just 25.3 years old. Now, the average demographic age of Malaysians in general is 30. So that's a huge demographic benefit. And this youth bulge is also an economic engine, Melvin. So how can the youth vote be framed as not only civic participation, but also as a claim to Sabah's economic future, which of course the youth must have stakeholdership in?
So for this, we believe the Sabahan youth need to involve in participate in election, because in doing so, they actually elect people that know how to make policy. That when we're saying about making policy, right, it's not just for their own political drama. We need someone who able that can, someone who a leader that able to generate opportunity for the youth. Because as far as I know, when I refer back to the dozen, right, for I think last quarter of 2024, our unemployment rate is standing on 7.7%, which is twice the amount of national unemployment rate. So actually, we, uh, we need policies that channel investment into local startup, agriculture innovation, digital industry, and also technical education. Because all this while actually seen notice that Sabah, one of Sabah main what do you call sector that right now the government focus on is more on property. So actually it doesn't really feel what the youth want. So uh, the youth have to start demand long-term investment that create real jobs like downstream, not just election time cash out, like giving in Sabah saying we call it gula-gula, not just election time cash out. So they have the numbers and voice. So now we need the youth. They need a platform to push forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Melvin. Now, also, we are having some preliminary research which is showing us from Chile, for example, that young feminist movements, when women-led youth groups actually have a hand in co-drafting political manifestos, the turnout increases not only for youth, but also associated issues, including climate and welfare, and these become mainstream within 24 months. So while the road ahead is challenging, there is also a lot of issues which can be brought to the fore right now. Priska, welcome back to the conversation. So I'd like to move on into the discussion with you by looking a little bit at the fact that democracy really isn't enough if people do not understand the system. Tell me a little bit more about how MANDAK is utilizing and what kind of tools to engage rural youth in navigating the Sabahan fragmented political party landscape and to understand what they are really voting for. And this is something that, of course, we've noticed that MANDAK has been active in, particularly via your socials. Tell us more.
Terima kasih. Saya akan berbahasa Melayu disebabkan audiensnya ramai yang berbahasa Melayu. Jadi, Hai Mandak sebenarnya ada satu inisiatif yang bernama Kelas Kuada Kuasa, Bah. Jadi untuk kongsi kepada inisiatif ni adalah untuk kongsi kepada belia tentang macam mana sistem kerajaan di negara kita, di mana saluran untuk masalah kita dan macam mana sebenarnya semua perkara ni ada kaitan dengan undi kita. Modul ni sebenarnya saya buat sendiri untuk konteks Sabahan dan relevan dengan anak muda. Modul ni pun menggunakan visual yang menarik dan tidak disampaikan dengan gaya berceramah lah. Saya sendiri sudah uji dan saya dapatkan maklum balas daripada kawan-kawan dari komuniti yang saya kongsikan lah. Saya juga buat buku panduan dan skrip yang sebenarnya boleh membantu untuk belia lain ajar komuniti mereka. Dan baru-baru ini 26 hingga 27 hari bulan yang lepas, Hai Mandak sebenarnya baru saja buat satu training lah untuk melatih community ataupun key person di community lain untuk mengajar belia dorang juga. Sebab pada pendapat kami ini akan lebih efektif kalau belia di tempat itu sendiri macam yang dimention tadi iaitu fragmented kan Sabah. Jadi situasi pun berbeza dan isu-isu pun berbeza. Jadi kami percaya kalau orang di tempat itu sendiri yang mengajar itu akan jadi lebih efektif. Dan apa yang menyebabkan perkara ini lebih efektif? Sebab yang buat modul ini sendiri adalah belia, yaitu saya, dan kami sendiri adalah independen lah. Kami tidak terikat dengan mana-mana parti politik, kami tidak dibiayai oleh mana-mana parti politik, jadi kami ada freedom untuk membentuk modul kami yang lebih neutral dan lebih berpandukan atau lebih beratkan isu-isu semasa yang memang sedang terjadi di Sabah lah. Ya, terima kasih.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Priska. Now, that's very interesting as well, because globally what we're seeing is that these peer-to-peer style political literacy circles are really what's helping to shift the political empowerment into the hands of the youth, and in particular young women. Now, also interestingly enough, High Mandak's peer-to-peer political literacy circles are showing a 30% increase in the confidence of those who actually attend to be asking political candidates questions during the campaigning period. From Melvin's side, tell us a little bit more about the type of tactics and education and outreach which SEEN is focusing on.
You mean in rural area or in urban area?
It can depend on whichever you'd prefer to highlight. Up to you.
On my side, we focus more on urban area, because since you know that the youth nowadays is more on media social, right? So we actually providing them all the necessary info for them to understand what is happening on Sabah political arena. And at the same time, we actually try to combat the misinformation that happen in, our political scene, because there's many, I don't want to mention the name, but I noticed that there's a lot of these local news provider that, providing misinformation, because they are, they serve under, I would say, a master that maybe there are some people who are having their own agenda, so they're not really having the freedom to, give the proper information. So since we're not tied with any political party, we can give clear punya information to the public, because we want to let the public know what the truth, what is happening, so that they can make the decision better during the election. Yeah, that's from my side.
Understood. And also, of course, ensuring that youth are critical of online political content is truly important. So moving on from those strategies into Priska, can I ask you about looking at Sabah's territorial inequalities? There are the urban hubs like Kota Kinabalu, and also the neglected interior regions like Tonggot or Pensiangan. So this is, of course, a core grievance amongst youth. How can youth civic engagement translate this sentiment into political bargaining power before even the next state election date is actually announced, and from everything you have been noticing which has been happening?
Oke. Bagi saya ini soalan yang lebih baik diajukan kepada pihak yang bertanggung jawab lah. Jadi pihak yang bertanggung jawab ini sepatutnya adalah adun lah di setiap kawasan Sabah. Bargaining power yang belia ada untuk memberi tekanan kepada adun masing-masing sebenarnya untuk mencari penyelesaian kepada masalah-masalah yang menekan belia lah, menekan kami. Contoh masalah pengangguran, masalah pekerjaan, pendidikan, macam yang saya mention. Sebenarnya sebab berbalik kepada kuasa undi belia lah. Kami ada kuasa untuk mengangkat adun yang serius dengan masalah kami, dan kami belia juga ada kuasa untuk menurunkan adun lah yang tidak serius dengan masalah kami. Sebab masalah kami atau belia ni adalah masalah Sabah. Sebab belia adalah majoriti di Sabah, iaitu 55.3% ataupun lebih daripada 900,000 mengundi Sabah. Ataupun boleh dikatakan kami lah kingmaker sebenarnya. Sebab masalah kami bila masalah belia itu menjadi masalah Sabah lah. Sebab belia menentukan masa depan Sabah sebenarnya. Jadi kalau adun-adun ni atau MP peduli dengan Sabah, mereka juga sepatutnya pedulilah dengan nasib belia ni. Dalam masa yang sama, kita lah belia yang Sabah ni 900,000 ni kena bersatu padu untuk peduli dan untuk menilai dan mengundi adun yang serius dengan masalah kita. Sebab macam saya cakap tadi, kita lah kingmaker tu. Dan bayangkan kalau semua belia yang lebih daripada 50% ni paham tentang kuasa undi itu, saya yakin kita sebenarnya boleh demand untuk Sabah yang lebih baik lah, ataupun kita boleh demand untuk peluang-peluang yang lebih cerah untuk Sabah sebenarnya.
Thank you very much for that, Priska. Now, it's also very interesting because what you are speaking about on a different, more progressive side of the model, we have a very excellent regional example. In Philippines, they have the BARM youth councils, which actually have direct budgetary oversight in local development. And this actually is perhaps a model of participatory fiscal federalism relevant for even MA63 implementation in Sabah. And it actually all starts with, as you said, the responsible parties recognizing the power of collective action and actually engaging with the youth and their concerns as well. Right, fantastically put. Thank you very much. Now, moving along the discussion, there is also, Melvin as well as Priska, a growing gap between performative youth outreach and real inclusion. Youth wings of political parties, quite often they mirror outdated party hierarchies. In your opinions, what does meaningful youth political leadership look like? And how do we get there in time for Sabah's state elections? Melvin, could I pitch this to you first?
I do believe that youth wing in political party they cannot just serve as decoration, They cannot just be pasubunga. They need to equal the party elders, but at the same time, they also need to shape the policy. And in SIN, we do believe that true youth leadership starts with influence, not just position. So actually, we did encourage the youth to be vocal about policy, not just based on personality. So when the youth wing, there are a lot of party in Sabah, and of course there are a lot of youth wing figure in Sabah also. We in SIN, we urge them to not just follow your leader, but be one of it. Because if the party are giving the youth space to shape the manifesto, if the party doesn't give the room for them to shape the manifesto, then they need to fight for it. Because young voice, they only be used during campaign. So the youth really need to insist on getting their rights, getting their rights and privilege to form policy and also involved in the party making decision. So at the same time, the youth wing also need to be grounded in local issue, and they must serve the people, not serve their leader. They need to serve the people. Only by this way, changes can happen. Yeah, that's from my side.
Indeed, and the youth functioning currently, of course, in political parties more as campaign machinery rather than leadership pipelines, right? So there is also a little bit of a disconnect occurring between grassroots youth political initiatives and youth who are also already involved within the political system. So from Priska's side, of course, MANDAK is also among the first women-led youth organization in Sabah, which has been invited to observe candidate selection. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this, but at the same time, only about 12% of party youth wings actually include young women in any decision-making roles. Some thoughts, Priska.
Ya, pasti bagi saya, apa yang sebenarnya menghalang untuk wanita menjadi sebagian daripada pembuat keputusan. Sebagai wanita, saya nampak yang suara wanita ini memang perlu ada dalam proses membuat keputusan. Ini bukan untuk wanita bersaing dengan lelaki, tapi untuk membolehkan negara kita, Malaysia, menghasilkan sistem yang lebih inklusif. Dan kedua-dua juga akan sebenarnya mendapat keuntungan, bukan cuma wanita, tetapi juga lelaki lah. Contohnya, kalau saya baca daripada kajian World Bank, ada yang menyebut di sana adalah sekiranya gender employment gap dapat dikurangkan, GDP itu dapat dinaikkan sebanyak 20%. Dan penglibatan wanita pun dalam kepimpinan juga dapat meningkatkan institusi dan meningkatkan ekonomi lah, dan lebih banyak lagi. Jadi saya rasa bukan satu halangan pun sebenarnya untuk kita tidak membawa wanita lah lebih ramai untuk terlibat dalam proses untuk membina kita punya negara. Ya.
Absolutely. And from there, I'd like to jump straight in, Priska, into looking at the stark gender gap for candidates, of course. Now, the 2020 state elections, only 43 out of 447 candidates, or 9%, were women. Now, how can this be changed, as Sabah's current 30% quota for women's political participation is, of course, not a policy, and tentatively the final state assembly before the next elections already concluded in mid-July.
Pada pendapat saya, wanita yang pertama, first step yang perlu dilakukan adalah memberi ruang kepada wanita. Selain memberi ruang juga adalah memberi pendidikan juga lah untuk membangun wanita. Sebab bagi saya, sekiranya kita memberi ruang sahaja, tapi kita tidak groom wanita untuk menjadi pemimpin atau menjadi sebahagian daripada yang akan memberikan suara ataupun keputusan di dalam membuat keputusan itu sendiri, saya rasa platform itu cuma akan menjadi satu hiasan atau cuma menjadi satu nomor lah atau satu report yang akan mengatakan, oh ada wanita yang terlibat di sini. Jadi saya rasa tindakan pertama yang perlu negara kita implement adalah untuk memperkasakan wanita dan sekaligus memberikan ruang yang praktikal, bukan cuma satu nama ataupun satu program lagi.
Indeed. And also, it has been very interesting to note that collectivization-wise, Sabahan NGOs, including SAWO as well as MANDAK, have been joining calls to actually use all 6 nominated seats to appoint top-performing female candidates. So this would actually immediately raise women's representation from 8.2% to roughly around 15%. And this would actually narrow the gap to just 15 points from the globally recommended at least 30% representation for 50% of the population. Melvin, from your side and scene's perspective, thoughts on actually political parties and their lack of actually putting up female candidates for elections? Do you feel that the trend is going to continue, and how do we circuit break that before the next election cycle comes?
So for this, I believe the trend will be continue, but what we can do as youth is that we need to bring up this matter into social media and so on, because only by this way, right, the politician and also the policymaker can start seeing that, oh, the people they are neglected on this. So we need to try to solve it up as soon as possible. So, and it's actually really frustrating. We see that there's a lack of movement, in political scene and also the policy making. So we do hope that in future, more capable women able to take the post up as to lead as a leader, not just a follower. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Melvin. Before we move on to closing out the entire discussion, I'd just like to give Priska the space to highlight the Kinabalu Declaration for women-only additional seats. Tell us a little bit more about this and why it is important and how it could actually change the narrative for this upcoming state election. No more waiting, no more looking for the next and the next, but the upcoming one. Priska, are you able to hear me?
Question?
Yes. I wanted to ask you about looking at MANDAK's proposal for a pre-election cross-party declaration, the Kinabalu Declaration for women-only additional seats. Let's say something which could maybe go towards signing by collective strategies, and then perhaps it could be a way in which you can push to ensure that political parties are definitely platforming women. Could this be something that can be done in the interim, even before the election dates are announced?
Pada pendapat saya, ini sebenarnya soalan yang menarik lah. Bagi saya ini, apa yang kita perlukan bukan sebenarnya another declaration, tapi satu tindakan yang memang solid lah. Sebab pada pendapat saya, belia Sabah sendiri sudah terlalu penat lah untuk mendengar satu janji lagi, satu janji lagi, satu janji lagi. Jadi sebenarnya yang kita perlukan adalah bukti, bukannya satu deklarasi lagi? Dan adakah ini akan boleh menjadi sesuatu yang kami pegang atau menjadi sesuatu yang promising? Adalah bergantung kepada beliau juga untuk memastikan apa yang dijanjikan itu akan betul-betul dilaksanakan. Sebab saya percaya beliau memang sudah penatlah dengan situasi taburan janji yang banyak. Jadi saya rasa ini berbalik kepada beliau. Beliau kena faham kuasa undi kita dan sebenarnya apa posisi kita dalam membentuk sebenarnya negara kita nih atau membentuk negeri kita dan membentuk keputusan kita. Jadi itulah kenapa kami buat inisiatif kalau ada kuasa, Pak, untuk menunjukkan yang memang kita nih ada kuasa dan bukan kita cuma ada kuasa untuk mendapatkan janji tapi mendapatkan tindakan. Ya.
Thank you very much for that. We hear you loud and clear. So to end out the conversation, a few quick thoughts about looking at migration. So there is also a vote and vanish scenario, Melvin as well as Priska, where Sabahan youth register and vote, then of course leave for perhaps Selangor, Singapore, where they're based for work or permanently relocated. So how can political engagement be tied to reasons to stay? Melvin?
Okay, if in sync, we do believe that political action can reverse this what we call the migration thing because since in China we more on infographic, right, in Instagram, so we actually push for youth focused development, like we address the public transport issue and also the what do you call that, the thing that let the youth so that they can have the what do you call, so that they have the interest to keep staying in Sabah. And also at the same time, actually, in future, I do believe that seeing we post more posting on regarding how the youth can, contribute back to Sabah, but at the same time they can stay here. So that because we don't want to see the brain drain happen at Sabah, because apparently there's a lot of youth at Sabah migrate overseas and also to our neighbor Singapore and also to West Malaysia just to find a job opportunity. So at the same time also the youth itself they need to push make their voice louder regarding about the career growth and also in policy making and also lack of infrastructure like the road and electricity in Sabah, right? So that the politician really find something find a way to solve this.
Thank you very much for the insights, Melvin as well as Priska. Now, clearly, Sabahan youth are no longer a silent majority. They're the front line of a political and economic shift. Well, that's all we have time for today on Niaga Spotlight, having a deep dive into looking at the youth vote for Sabah's upcoming state elections. I'm Tamina Kausji signing off for now, and we'll see you next week with more economic analysis and insights. Here's to a productive week ahead.